So in the last tutorial we created this very basic shooting game where we're able to shoot these boxes. Okay, so we're going to kind of build on this by going up to our assets folder and creating a new folder and just putting in FPS. So we're going to create a simple FPS sort of tutorial using the pre-built-in stuff that you'd find inside of Unity. Alright, so we want to go ahead and save our scene here, and then we're going to create a new scene, and then save this scene as in our FPS folder as FPS. Alright, so now we're in our FPS folder, we have our FPS. I'm going to create a folder in here, and I'm going to call this scripts. And this is for our FPS game. And I'm going to go into our shoot game, and I'm going to copy this script here. Let's select it, hit Control C, go into our assets, FPS, and then paste it. Let's see if we could do that again. Doesn't look like it allows us to copy it. I mean, we can actually just reuse this script later. So let's go ahead and let's set up a very simple map. So let's go ahead and create a cube. This is going to be our ground plane. Now, because we made a new scene, when you select your main camera, you notice it no longer has that shooter. We're actually going to select our main camera and delete it. And we don't actually have the standard assets imported, so I'm going to right click on assets and go to import package, character controller, and that's what's located in the standard assets. You'll see standard assets, character controllers. Just go ahead and hit import, and it's going to import it into the assets here, and just leave it as a separate file for now. Alright. Within this folder, you'll notice that there's a third person and a first person. We're going to drag our first person controller in here. Alright. And create another cube. Actually, don't create another cube. I forgot that in our shooter game, we have a box prefab we could just drag in there. And I'm going to duplicate it, hold Control, and let it snap. And then I'll shift select each one of these guys. Hit Control D, holding Control, I'll snap it again. So now with my first person controller selected, I'll expand this, select my main camera here, go to my shooter game, go into the scripts folder, and reset up that shooter script. Go into my shooter game, go into prefabs, select my bullet, drag it on here. So now when I press play, you can see I have a first person controller that shoots. Okay? What we want to do at this point is we want to start to take a look at 3 different types of ways of interacting with objects. We want to look at colliding with objects, which means walking into any box or cube that has a collider and triggering an animation. And then we want to take a look at triggering an object with a raycast, and that's by looking at an object and it'll play an animation within a specific distance. And there are triggers. Those are objects you can walk through and that'll trigger animations. So let's take a look at colliding with an object. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a very simple cube object here. Let's create a light too while we're at it. And I'm just going to make it local. Alright. I'm going to hit spacebar here to kind of zoom in here for a second. And I'm going to build a wall. So here, I'm going to duplicate that over, place it here. This is going to be our door. And then duplicate this. Scale this up. Maybe I'll scale up my door a little bit too. And then I'll duplicate this as well. Alright, so what I want to do is when my character walks into this door, it opens it up. Okay, so let's go ahead and name this door in our inspector, and I'm going to name this wall, and I'm going to name this wall as well. Now, ideally what you would want to do is you can animate it in here, but you can animate and model the door and walls in Maya or in Max or whatever your chosen application is. So let's go ahead and animate this door open. So I'm going to go to Window, turn on Animation, and I'm going to set a key. And inside of my FPS, I'm going to create a folder, and I'm going to call it Animations. So I'm going to call this animation door underscore open. And I'm going to hit save. So this is our animation viewer. So I'm going to give this a little shake, and I'm going to say, okay, at around 30 frames, I want the door to open. And then at about a minute, I want it to close. Alright, so I'm going to press play to see how that looks. And it looks pretty good. So about a half a second, sorry. So it takes about a second to open and close. And you can tweak that later. Alright, now that's saved in the door open animation file. Now what you'll notice is, if I have the door selected and I go to animation, there's a new animation component attached. I don't want it to play automatically, so I'm going to uncheck that. So now when I press play, you'll notice the door doesn't move at all. I should make this all a little bit bigger. Alright, so let me select all these guys. I'm holding shift to multiple select. Let me move this up. Alright, that's a little more realistic. Okay, so now we have a door animation. Let's script it so this door opens. So let's go into our FPS here and go into our scripts folder and create a new C# script and call it door, or we'll call it player COL, and that stands for player collision. So this script is going to handle all of our player collisions. So if it bumps into an object, the door will open. If it bumps into something that would reduce its health, it'll damage the character's health. Now, just like void start and void update are pre-made methods within C#, let's take a look at another pre-made method called onController collider hit. So what we want to do is we want to type void here on, and it should pop up controller collider hit. Now, this particular method is used to control all of the collisions that happen. So if you bump into anything that has a collider, see how this has a box collider? You can actually access any object that has a collider in it using this method. Now, you actually have to store anytime you collide into an object with a variable. So we're going to call our variable hit, and we have to give it a data type. So what you can do is you can copy this controller collider hit here. That's an actual data type. And it says, let's put it just like in most C# programs. Let me maximize this. This variable can store anything that hits with a collider. So any interaction. So anytime you bump into a collider, this variable will store it. Okay, so let's actually do something with this. So what I'm going to say is, if we actually hit something, okay, and it happens to be a game object, and it's tagged with something. Now, we talked about set tags a little bit in our space game, and we're going to actually call that, and remember, this is going to actually be attached to our first-person controller. So we want to check if we bump into something, for example, called door. Okay? And if we bump into that door and it's not open, okay? So let's create a Boolean variable up at the top here, okay? And you do that by creating a variable called bool, and we're just going to write door is open, semicolon. and we're going to set that equal to false. So let's say this. So if we bump into an object called door and door is open, is set to false, which it is. We see that up here. We want to do something. Now I'm going to end this tutorial here, but I just want to clarify something. The reason we're setting this to false is we don't want to continuously bump into this door and have it play the same audio or animations or whatever. So say you have a door animation sound, and we'll hook that up too so you guys can see how easy that is. Alright, so in the next tutorial we'll take a look at finishing off this door open script.